Hey guys, welcome back in. Today, lore-wise, we're going to be talking about Alistar. Um, we're going to start off by kind of discussing the time frame in which his primary story that we have so far occurred. So it happened right before Swain overthrew the ruler of Noxus prior to him, which was Boram Darkwell. We're not going to get into the political parts of that. That's just to give you kind of an idea. Of like when this was happening. Okay, so now that it's out of the way, so Alistar is a part of these like different groups of Minotaurs and stuff. They had several clans. All right, and he was one of the members. He was a warrior amongst them. He's really known for his strength and stuff. Okay, so just he's a very potent member of these clans. Right. So this arrow here is pointing towards sort of the area they controlled. So now this is all controlled by Noxus, but at the time it wasn't. Okay, so Alistar and his different clansmen lived sort of in this area, like these mountains. Okay, the Great Barrier Mountains, which was an important trade route to get here to Zon, and also there's a few little places kind of scattered throughout here. Okay, so that's just a frame of reference. Now, the sort of meat of his story takes place with one particular event, which is the takeover of Basilich, if that's how you say it, or well, like right before that. So, a Noxian house, the House of Twain, and excuse my pronunciation, some of these may be a little rough for me. The matriarch of the House of Twain came here with an army, right? So they sent a messenger, and basically they wanted to come over here, right, and take over Basilich, which, by the way, fun note, is where Darius and Draven are from, okay? But they wanted the support of all the different Minotaurs living in these mountains, okay? And the reason this is such an important thing to them, okay, is because there's kind of an issue. Now, obviously, Alistar is not human, right? Let's flip back to that picture. Okay, look, he's a big bull guy. They're Minotaurs, all right? Now, we know the Vestians and stuff exist, right? There's other animal-like people, but obviously there's some issues amongst the different races that exist in Valorant, right? Or Valorant. So, the issue with them is that nobody sees them as anything but like beasts. But they're an intelligent people. Like, they have language, they conversate, they have clans. They're smart, right? They're actual people, you know? Now, the idea here is, and the reason a lot of clans people want to help the Noxians is because they can join them and get respect and get, like, I guess, recognition from all these different human folk, so that they can finally be more than just beast people, right? And it's an interesting, when you know what's about to happen, to think, because Alistar was one of the biggest proprietors of the idea of getting along with, you know, humans and stuff, and like encouraging those relationships so that to that end, okay? Now keep that in mind when everything that's about to happen happens. Okay, so that's all going down, but the thing is, Alistar does not trust the Noxians in particular, because he's seen a lot of Noxian scouts come by. He's interacted with them. They seem kind of tricky and sneaky. He's not a fan. Okay, he doesn't trust them necessarily. So when they do the big meeting, they send out representatives from different clans, okay, from the Mountain Minotaurs, all right, to discuss it. So they meet on the battlefield, okay, just a big open field, I guess, and then it happens, okay? Apparently, all of the other clans other than Alistar's had already planned to join Noxus, okay, but they knew he wouldn't. So, all of the other Minotaur representatives and the Noxians turn and all attack Alistar's particular clan, right? Now, they're great warriors and stuff, but obviously against other Minotaurs and the enemy, they're going to lose. Okay, so they lose and they're captured. But not before, satisfying note, Alistar does manage to fight and the lore crush the head of the matriarch of the House Twain. So they did get some comeuppance for this. But this leads to them being dragged back to Noxus and captured and put in this type of like gladiatorial event held in Noxus called the Fleshing. Very intense name. Um, so they're there, and initially, Alistar kind of wants to take like a sort of, I guess, Gandhi stance on things, where he wants to sort of protest by not partaking in these gladiatorial games that the Noxians want him to. Um, Now, unfortunately, that doesn't work, and so him and his loyal clansmen have to fight. Okay, they're forced to, and eventually, it's just Alistar standing. He's lost all of his clansmen; they're all dead. Okay, they've all died in these horrible, horrible events where basically a bunch of humans are pitted up against these, big Minotaur people, um, and it gets to the point where he loses his mind. Okay, his original attempt at like boycotting the event is gone. He's just a maddened warrior at this point, to the point he's just trying to scare and intimidate everybody who comes up to him. Like he becomes the beast that he never wanted his people to be seen as, in a way. And then the ray of hope comes. There's a servant girl that approaches him named Aelia, which I hope I said right. And initially, he tries to scare her like everybody else. It doesn't work. Okay, and Aelia is a servant who, much like with Alistar, her people were taken over by Noxus and brought in. Um, Now, so they eventually kind of get a little bit of friendship going on. He eventually gets used to her, and he starts coming back to his senses. He's back to the original Alistar. Okay, and eventually, Aelia gets an opportunity to get the key to his cell. Okay, and they plan this daring escape, and they do. They do actually escape, and they get. I'm gonna guess it isn't really specified too well. I'm gathering that it's probably somewhere over here, because they're at a river, so probably next to one of these. And they're going to escape on a boat. So they get there, but so Noxians have a lot of sneaky stuff going on. They did notice them escaping and had an ambush prepared. So they're attacked, and Alistar starts fighting. He starts going into his like bloodlusted state again. And unfortunately, once he defeats everybody, the boat is gone, and he can't find Aelia. They left without him. Right. I don't think it was her choice. I think it was whoever was driving the boat. So that, obviously he's not too happy about that. He still escaped, though, and this is around the time, like at this moment, is when Swain ends up taking over from Boram Darkwell, which causes a lot of unrest, and that makes people forget about Alistar. Okay, so now he's kind of traveling in Noxus, keeping as low a profile as he can, which I do imagine is a little hard being a giant Minotaur. But granted, they did take over the mountains, so it could be explained probably that they're sort of more, incorporated into the Noxian people's lives, at least to some extent. So maybe that's not as weird as it would be otherwise. And so he's traveling around. He kind of helps seed like political unrest where he can, trying to suggest to people, fight back against the Noxian rule or whatever. And then also like protecting people he sees that are weak, that are getting bullied. Effectively, he's kind of like a hero. And I think in part of it, in the way his lore says it, he's atoning a little bit for him kind of indirectly leading to the, the death of all of his clansmen. And maybe a little bit about all the people he killed in the arenas. I don't think all of them were necessarily like evil people. A lot of them were probably just put in there, much like Alistar was. So he's doing all that. Okay, so that's right now in the current like worldview of League of Legends. That's what he's doing. Okay, now let's move on. I want to talk about what Alistar really is now and kind of explain what he's not, because it can be a little convoluted here. Okay, so he's a Minotaur, right? Big bull guy. That seems simple enough, but if you know League of Legends, there's other people that are sort of human-ish, or demi-humans, you could say, but they're not the same thing, okay? So Alistar is a Minotaur, keep that in mind. Our next example is Volley Bear. Okay, Volley Bear, in loose terms, is a spirit basically. Um, he's called a demigod a lot. He's essentially a spirit that gains power based on humans' belief in him. Okay. And he has a very human animal appearance, but I think his appearance can change based on what people believe. Okay. But if you see him in game, he's not like a demi human. He's not like anything like what Alistar is. Okay. He's not a Vestayan either. This is like a spirit. All right. Like Ornn, Anivia. I think Kindred is considered one as well, but from like a different area and a little bit more primal, I suppose. It's hard to explain. Anyways, next example is Rengar. Okay, Rengar is a Vestayan. Now, Vestayan comes in 3 varieties, okay? There's ones that look like this, which are very animal, little less human, like a demi-human kind of deal. Then there's the other ones that are very light on the animal aspects. Think Ari, Rakan, Zaya, kind of like the cat ears type deal. You know what I mean? And then there's ones that can shapeshift who are very light on the animal, like very, very light on the animal aspects. They can just turn into an animal, be a magical means like Nidalee. Nidalee's Vestayan, but I guess to a lesser degree, and that's why she's like that. That's a whole can of worms to get into. But the point is, all 3 of these, this guy, this guy, this guy, different, okay? All different, right? Not the same. So don't get too confused. Alistar is his own unique species. They're not at all related. It's his own thing. There's a few other examples like this, like trolls. Jax, who I think is a unique type of troll to the Ixtal area. It's a whole thing. Or Acathia, sorry, not Ixtal. Wrong one. Acathia. And there's different... I hope League of Legends does more about the different species that are kind of around. It'd be really cool to see them. But yeah, that's Alistar, kind of in a nutshell. He's part of a really cool and interesting like species that's very like lightly touched on. It'd be cool to see them maybe include some more champions that are either of the same species as Alistar that maybe are a different archetype. I imagine there's differences, like they're not all just big fighters. Like maybe there's some that have an interest in magic, or maybe there's some that are more sneaky, you never know. Or fight in different ways. Or maybe just other unique species that aren't attached to any of the big groups. I'm sure there's a lot of them, or maybe like a dragon or something. There's all these other intelligent species that we know are around that just aren't talked about very much. That's why I really wanted to cover Alistar's story. I'm going alphabetically with these, but I'm kind of just staying in the A's right now and not necessarily going in exact order, only because I want to talk about certain champions to maybe give you a better idea for other ones, or just so I have more time for some of the ones that I think are going to be more complex to like talk about. But yeah, that's Alistar. If you watch this video, you'll have probably a better understanding than most who don't bother reading lore about who and what he is. Because on the surface, he's just big bull guy that is tough and strong and wants to beat things up. Okay? And it maybe explains to you better why his kit in game is more designed towards support. Okay? Because even though he is a big bullfighter guy, he is a defender of the weak. It ties very well into what he does in the game, which I think is really cool. But yeah, that's it. That's Alistar. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.